Oh, hello. I am so happy to have you here with us today for another of our Meeting the Masters. And today I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here with Darryl Anka, who is the person who channels Bashar. And Bashar is a teacher, has been a teacher of mine, an important teacher of mine for many years. And so I'm just so happy to have Darryl with us. Now, we will not be interviewing Bashar, we'll be interviewing Darryl, but Darryl is definitely the ultimate student of Bashar. So Darryl, hello. So happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, and I want more and more people to know about Bashar because their work is just so important. So I'm going to start off and ask you, how did you first connect with Bashar? It's such a fantastic story.
Thank you. Well, this all began, as I've mentioned before, in 1973 when I had two very close broad daylight UFO sightings here over Los Angeles, where I live. First time about 150 feet away, second time only about 60 or 70 feet away. Equilateral black triangular ship, blue-white light on each point, and a sort of a dull orange-red light underneath in the center. Now, having seen that, I knew that, you know, when people said UFOs don't exist, I knew that that was wrong. The world kind of changed at that moment significantly, and I had to find out what was going on. So I started doing a lot of research to see what information I could find out about UFOs. And one thing kind of led to another, because especially back then, you know, there weren't a lot of metaphysical books out. There were a few. And whatever few there were, no matter what category they were in, be it UFOs or spirituality or channeling or anything, were sort of all on one bookshelf in the store in the back. And so I kind of went down the line, and my interest was piqued by the Seth books, which I guess many people sort of consider, you know, the beginning of the modern age of channeling. And, you know, I started reading all that and understood a little bit more about what the idea was of channeling. And 10 years after the sighting, I was introduced to a channel who was conducting seminars. I went to listen as part of my research, and eventually the entity coming through that channel offered to teach a channeling class. Now, I didn't think channeling could be taught. I just thought it was something that sort of spontaneously happened to one in one's life, if it was going to happen at all. So I was curious to understand, you know, what this entity had to say and how that process would be experienced. So I went into the class again, had no idea that I might wind up being a channel. And it wasn't expected that you had to channel another entity. It was just about maybe getting in touch with your own levels of consciousness and being more creative too, if that's the way you wanted to use it. But halfway through the course, which was a series of different guided meditations given by the entity, I received what I can only describe as a telepathic connection with Bashar and his people. The word Bashar was there. His image was there. Now, all of this sort of opened up in a split second where a memory came back of having made an agreement to do this. I understood the UFO had been shown to me by him to get me to start doing the research, so that by the time it was about the time to do the channeling, I would have enough information so that I wouldn't be confused or scared or thrown off, you know. And I sort of, this was all happening in my head in a split second. I wasn't saying anything to anybody. But at that moment, the entity coming through the channel, who was in the middle of the guided meditation, stopped and turned to me and said, there is an entity here for you right now, if this is something that you're willing to begin with. And I happened to glance behind me, and one of the other students in the class was sketching at that moment. Somehow she had picked up on the image that was in my head and was sketching Bashar's face that I had seen. So I already knew, okay, there's something going on here that's just outside of my imagination. Let me see where I can take this. Let's explore this further. And so I continued to practice in the class. I did well enough that the teacher asked me to co-channel the next class with him. And from that class, a woman doing her first doctoral thesis on the connection between channeling and psychology asked me to be one of the subjects for her paper. So I volunteered for that, and I would go to her house. I would teach well, not teach, I would channel for her friends that she would invite. But every week, the number of friends kept growing because word kept spreading that this was going on and people were enjoying it. So pretty soon we kind of like outgrew her house. I had to do it in 2 houses a week, and then had to do it in small auditoriums, and things just kept growing. And I started getting invited to different cities and different countries. One thing led to another, and here I am 37 years later still doing this. So that, in a nutshell, is sort of how this happened.
And like you said, doing it all over the world,
Yep.
people have so connected to this message. So what happens for you when you connect with Bashar?
Well, I go into this altered state, which is what I was trained to do in the meditations in the class. And the altered state changes my brainwave frequency from your normal everyday beta frequency, as it's called, to what is now recognized as the gamma frequency, which in the brain is between 40 and 100 cycles per second, 40 hertz to 100 hertz. When you're in that state, different things happen in the brain that allow for different kinds of connections to be made, different kinds of associations to happen, different kinds of processing speeds come about. Information is synthesized in a very different way, in a more holistic, holographic way, and can be output, so to speak, or translated into our language to offer new points of view from a higher perspective. Now, it apparently is also possible, at least according to my experience, that in that state you can also match frequencies with other independent consciousnesses and can act as a translation device, so to speak, for their thoughts as well. And so that, I think, is what's happening in a channeling. You know, the old-fashioned way of looking at this was, you know, well, you're being possessed by a spirit or some entity, whether benevolent or malignant. But really, that's not, in my understanding, what's happening mechanically. You are in a certain vibratory frequency state that is mirroring the state of another intelligence. And when you sort of match frequencies like tuning forks, you start resonating together and you have the same thoughts at the same time. So you're literally acting as a biological translator for the thoughts of another entity, but only because by acting on the same wavelength, they become your thoughts too, because that frequency determines what concepts you're actually able to perceive. And that, I think, is the basis for all mediumship and channeling. But it's like sort of falling into a deep daydream. It's very energetic. You get a lot of emotional experience. It's a very highly focused experience where concepts are downloaded into you very quickly. It's also a very strangely parallel experience, in the sense that I know there's something going on in terms of translating what Bashar is saying, but at the same time, I can also have a separate conversation with him because I don't have to pay attention to the translation. Time for me in the channeling state is very collapsed. If I do, let's say, an hour session, when I come out of it, it feels like maybe 20 minutes has passed. And one of the ways I've sort of described the experience is like standing under a pounding waterfall of energy and information, but the person hearing the translation is just getting the spray. I am so involved and engaged in what I'm experiencing that it simply makes no sense for me to disengage from it. And any awareness of anything that might be a vocal conversation is kind of like very muffled in the background and might as well be happening in either another room in the house or even another house. Because it's sort of similar to the idea that if, you know, you get lost in a daydream and somebody walks in the room and they have to call your name 3 times before you even hear them, it's sort of like that. You get this interesting dissociation from the daily world and you're wholly focused in this sort of other dreamlike reality. But at the same time, it's also very emotionally grounding and balancing. So you come out of it, ideally, once you get practiced enough and get familiar enough with the energy, you come out of it ideally not tired, but actually energized. And it really starts to support you. So it's a very expansive, very grounding experience. And it's really enjoyable.
Well, and especially because, as you said, you're going into these higher vibrations.
Yes.
And so hanging out there just feels good.
It rubs off on you too. You get to experience, I'll make it personal. I get to experience the way Bashar experiences reality. And that's profoundly different than the way we typically experience reality. So over time, that has sort of started to rub off on me and allowed me a greater ability to use his principles and apply them in my physical reality to get the effects that he says will happen. Because one of the most profound things I noticed right away in the difference between the way they experience reality and the way we do is that they don't have a shadow of a doubt about anything. And what they're describing to us is not a philosophy or an opinion. It's literally an observation. They've evolved to the point where they can actually literally see the structure of existence. So all they're doing is describing to us, in essence, an instruction manual for how reality physically works. And the idea, therefore, is that if we simply follow the instructions, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, reality will work to our advantage because we're aligning with the way the structure is designed or meant to work. So it's just something that has really created a very clarifying perspective of how we create our reality experiences, and by making choices, by aligning with either positive or negative belief systems. And it's really simplified the whole idea of how you can create a reality that is certainly more in alignment with your true vibration, and one that is certainly more in alignment with what you prefer to experience.
So let's talk, I want you to talk just a little bit about who Bashar is. And you're saying they, and I know you're saying they because Bashar isn't, well, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, I mean, Bashar is an individual in his society. They are still a physical race of extraterrestrials, but they are evolved to the point where they're almost non-physical. So they have the traits of both physical beings and spiritual beings to a certain degree. It's one of the reasons why their consciousness can do this. It can expand to the point where they can connect with other beings who've been properly trained to vibrate in accord with that society's frequency. Now, Bashar himself has a connection to me, linearly speaking, and I say it that way because from their perspective, time is an illusion and everything actually exists at the same time. But from the space-time perspective, from a linear point of view, we would be considered the same soul in two different time frames, in a sense. So he'll be like my future life, a future life of mine. I would be like a past life of his, if you want to look at it in that sort of old-fashioned way. And because this decision was made within that one single soul, but split itself into two personalities at least to perform this function, then I relate to him kind of as a future self, as a higher mind, representation of what I can be in my own reality, what I can aspire to in my own reality. But they are an extraterrestrial race. They are what's called a hybrid race. And that goes into a long story having to do with the idea of, what we've called detainments or alien abductions or visitations, and how the gray aliens, which are usually the ones depicted in those scenarios, are using human DNA to create a hybrid race to perpetuate their species, since they seem to be a dying race. So in the creation of these hybrid beings, of which Bashar's civilization is one group, they recognize that we are family, we are connected genetically, and that in observing that we might be going down the same negative path on Earth that the gray civilization went down, that rendered them incapable of procreating and continuing their society, they're willing to help us up the ladder by sharing with us what they have learned from the Gray's mistakes so that we don't necessarily have to follow the same path. So the thing that I appreciate the most about the way Bashar delivers information is that he does render what most people would consider to be very esoteric metaphysical concepts down into a very practical, pragmatic, physical toolkit that gives us the ability to actually get a physical effect by applying these principles into our reality, so that it becomes an easier thing for us to take a different path, and to take a path that is far more creative, far more powerful, and far more positive than the Greys took in what they did in their society. So in a sense, it's kind of like our descendants are coming back to speak to their ancestors about how to take a different path.
Right. So let's talk about the formula.
Yes.
because he has, go ahead and talk about the formula.
Well, the basic formula has 4 principles in it that are very simple. Number 1 is that you act at every moment that you possibly can on your highest passion or excitement. I'll just go through the principles and then we can kind of backtrack as to what that means. The second is to do it the best you can, as often as you can, for as long as you can, until you can do it no longer. And then you find out what the next most exciting thing is and follow that path. You do this with absolutely no assumption, no insistence on what the outcome should look like. And no matter what manifests, you remain in a positive state so that you can receive the benefit of whatever manifests, even if what manifests isn't what you objectively prefer. You have to know by staying in a positive state that it's got to be there for a reason that can serve you. And if you stay in the positive state, you will experience the benefit for why that happened the way it did. Those are the 4 principles. Now, the idea of why that's important is one of the things where Bashar has kind of brought that esoteric concept down to earth, because, you know, you've heard for a long time, oh, you know, act on your passion, follow your bliss, you know, act on your excitement. But why? Why is that so important? And what he explains is what we experience as the sensation of passion, excitement, creativity, love, that frequency is our body's physical translation of a communication from our non-physical higher mind. It's literally an energy language that our body interprets as those sensations. The idea then of acting on your passion is important, because what then Bashar is saying, you have to answer the higher mind if you want to stay aligned with it and take the advantage of the passion of what it's telling you, by taking physical actions on that excitement. Because while we often think that words are the language of physical reality, they're not. Physical actions are the language of physical reality. We all know that, but we tend to forget it because we often say, oh, you know, don't listen to what someone says, watch what they do. That tells you who they really are. And that's true. So that's what Bashar is attempting to drive home, is if you're not actually taking action, physical actions on your passion, you're not speaking the language of physical reality. No one can really hear you. And you're not really responding to the higher mind, letting the higher mind know you heard it, you get it, you're willing to act on it. And that's what creates the dialogue back and forth that allows the higher mind then to go, okay, he or she heard me, so now I'm going to send you more opportunities to act on your passion. Because if you're not acting on it, then it's like you haven't heard the higher mind. So why should it send you more opportunities for passion when you haven't acted on what it's already sent you? It would make no sense. It will wait until you decide to make the choice to align with it by showing it that you're willing to act on that passion that it sent you, that path that it sent you, that synchronicity that it sent you, that you recognize that that's what it is a message from your higher self saying, this is your path, this is the way to go. That's what the passion tells you. This is your path. So by following that compass needle to your own true magnetic north, you're always staying in alignment with who you truly are, what your life is really all about, why you chose to be here in this life, and holds in a very magical, synchronistic way with much less effort and much more joy.
Well, and again, the excitement is the vibration.
Mm-hmm.
It's the higher vibration. So it is the way for your physical body and your emotional body to know that, yes, you're on the right path, or you're doing what is supposed to be happening, or you are connected. Right. It's literally, as you said, the North Star, but it's something that you literally can feel.
Absolutely. That's the whole point. That makes it easy. And you know that when you don't feel that, for some reason, whether you're the one doing it or not, or whether it's truly not you, you know that it is or isn't right for you. You know that it's not aligned with who you really are if you're not really picking up on that. Now, you have to be honest within yourself, because it's quite possible for humans with their belief systems to diminish what actually could be your excitement, because you might be afraid of acting on it, or any other number of reasons. I'm not worthy, or this or that. So you have to be, at first and foremost, honest with your own self-investigation. You have to, as the ancient phrase says, know thyself. You have to be clear and honest so you know whether you're the one dampening the excitement or whether something is truly not in alignment with your excitement. But if it truly is, if you can make that determination clearly, then acting on it is going to be the path of least resistance. It's going to be the thing that will speed you through life in the most creative way and bring you everything you need and leave nothing relevant out. It will drive you forward and allow you to experience an upwelling and an expansion of all sorts of positive synchronicity. The thing that a lot of people forget is that it's not that synchronicity ever stops, but there is positive and negative synchronicity. So if you're aligning with the idea of fear-based beliefs, you're going to get a reinforcement of negative synchronicity that will reinforce the idea that that negativity is a fact, when in fact it's nothing more than a belief. So you have to really be clear within yourself as to what is and is not truly representative of your essential frequency, of your passion in life that really is the path that you chose to be.
So you said a few minutes ago that hanging out with Bashar has affected your life.
Sure.
And I know as far as, you know, the vibration that you feel when you're with him and all of that, but I'm sure, and I just like to have you talk about how that has affected your life and choices that you've made and, you know, all of that with you
Well,
living
sure.
your excitement.
As best as I possibly can, yes. I mean, I'm other things I do is I'm an author, I'm a filmmaker. Those are expressions of my excitement as well as the channeling. You know, I love to share this information. I'm even doing more of this as myself, and that's actually one of the side effects and one of the benefits of being steeped in these principles for 37 years is it's now much easier for me to actually conduct classes as myself and talk about these principles. And I know that both of them are kind of essential. So it's kind of like people appreciate that Bashar delivers this information to them and they really enjoy his energy. At the same time, when I conduct classes as myself, it gives people an opportunity to relate to me more as a human being and to spend more time really digging more deeply into the principles that Bashar doesn't have when he's doing just like a 2-hour event. Whereas if we do a class that lasts for days or weeks, you know, if someone is not clear on what some of the concepts are, we can spend the time to really go through them, even using visual aids and things like that, until the person really gets it. And that's really rewarding when you see someone just suddenly go, aha, I get it, it makes sense, and they start applying it. Because then what's really gratifying about the channeling is having them come back and say, you know, I got it, I applied the principle, it worked, my life is so much happier, it's so much more abundant, it's so much easier and smoother, so much more creative, so much more loving, so much more freeing. That's very rewarding. So that's been a big difference in my life by doing this. I myself am more emotionally balanced. I bring myself to the things that are my passion in a very different, more holistic way. I do them because they are my passion. I don't put conditions on them. I let them take me where they're going to take me. I follow the flow of my existence more because I know from what Bashar has taught that each and every one of us has their own unique flow and our flow knows where we need to go. So we just need to go with that current. I mean, I think one of the most profound things I've learned from what he's delivered, and one of the things that's made the biggest difference in my life physically, is to understand the concept that surrender is not surrendering our control. Surrender is surrendering to the control that's already automatically built into who we are and our connection to existence, to the cosmos, to all that is, whatever you want to call it, creation. We all automatically have a current in the ocean of creation, and our current knows exactly where we need to go. So by sort of surrendering to that, that is the equivalent of what we've said for many years of going with your flow. And it will always bring you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, in perfect timing. And it will take you exactly to the experiences you need to have so that you can expand yourself and grow and remember who you are as a greater being beyond this physical focus. But,
And
you know, we're here to experience a new way of looking at ourselves and to give us the opportunity to discover ourselves from a new perspective, because we've kind of forgotten who we are so that we can remember who we are from a new point of view, because the structure of existence, as Bashar explains it, that never changes. What changes is our perspective and our experience of that structure. And that's how creation expands, and that's infinite.
so how do you think that shows up?
In what sense?
The new way of being.
Well, like I said, you get a much more expanded experience of positive synchronicity. You see opportunities and things coming into your life that are almost crazily magical. I mean, ridiculous things start happening. You know, you think about a person that you would never have normally met in your life for a particular reason, and boom, they show up the next day. And you've never met them before. You've never initiated contact. They're just there when they need to be there. Opportunities open up in weird ways. You get strange synchronous signs, like, you know, different numbers keep popping up to let you know you're in the right frequency, you're on the right path.
Without all the resistance.
Without any really resistance. And it gives you also an opportunity to find that if there is resistance within you, that pops up. If there's any belief systems you're holding on to that don't serve you, that pops up. But instead of being defined as an interruption in your flow, you have to understand that finding something that's not your excitement in your belief system is actually part of your excitement. So when you take that attitude, you're staying in a positive state, and you can find out what that belief system is and let it go far more easily, because you understand that that's why it came up. It's not that you're trying to ignore it, gloss it over, rush away from it, or anything like that, or think, oh, I'm supposed to be somewhere else, this shouldn't be happening to me. If it's happening for a reason. And the reason may simply be to point out that you might still be holding on to something that you really don't prefer, or that you're testing yourself to see if something like that pops up, are you going to react the same old way, or are you going to respond in a new way, which proves you've actually changed? Because if you just react the same old way, you haven't changed. So why should your reality reflection? The idea is to treat reality like a mirror. It's only going to give you the reflection of what you're giving off. So if you're seeing your reflection frown in the mirror, you can stand there all day long and hope that the reflection will smile, but it never will until you do. And if you're going to test yourself, because we have a space-time lag here in physical reality, you may actually test yourself and say, all right, I'll smile. But then if I don't see what I want because I'm smiling, then I'm going to frown again. So the idea is that you're not really changing for its own sake. You're changing because you're putting conditions on what you think it'll get you. And that's why it's so important to not have the assumption or insistence on what the outcome should be. Because the humble truth is that the physical mind actually has no clue what the best outcome is. We may think we do, but we don't. And that's where we have to give over to the flow and trust the way our life unfolds, and know that we will be taken where we need to be taken by that flow, and face what we need to face and deal with it at that moment, because that's going to give us the information and the lesson we need to move on and expand ourselves in the way we truly prefer, rather than often the way we think we're supposed to get somewhere, which may actually be the longest possible path. We just don't know.
Well, and I know that in my own life, when I let myself be taken over by the flow, I end up in a place that's way more better.
Exactly.
Way better.
Exactly. See, yeah.
In my own head.
That's the way it works. See, the higher mind knows where we need to go. The physical mind really has no clue. It can sometimes guess. It might sometimes get it right. But that's the trap, is because then we think it's always going to be what my physical mind comes up with. But you're right. What to the physical mind may seem to be the greatest possible outcome, to the higher mind might be just the beginning. And if you insist on the outcome the physical mind has imagined, you might actually be shortchanging yourself from getting a better outcome, a much better outcome that the higher mind can bring you, if you would just get out of your own way and let it do its job.
So you said a few minutes ago that we're supposed to be remembering who we really are.
Well, no, I wouldn't put it as supposed to, but that's really what this journey is about. It gives us an opportunity to understand that we're more than just this physical being, this physical focus, that we are a greater spiritual being, a multidimensional being, and that there are ways to express that even while being in this physical reality. And it gives us a chance to discover how that can be experienced and how we can add to the understanding of who we are.
Now, what are there practices that you do? Do you still meditate?
No.
Yeah.
The channeling is my meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
but the practice to me is literally just practice the formula, because that is what Bashar has given us. He has distilled down every single principle into those 4 steps. It automatically unlocks all the tools we need. It becomes the driving engine that moves us through life. It becomes the organizing principle of synchronicity that arranges everything in perfect timing. It becomes the path of least resistance. It becomes the path that connects us to all expressions of excitement that are relevant for us in our life. It is the path of relevance. It leaves absolutely nothing important out whatsoever that we need in life. It becomes the path of support and abundance in whatever form of abundance we need to allow us to continue to act on our excitement. And like I said, it becomes the reflective mirror that points out anything within our belief system that is out of alignment, so we can examine what that belief is, let it go, and add that energy to our momentum. But all of that happens automatically when you simply precisely do the 4 steps of act on your passion to the best you can, no insistence or assumption on the outcome, and remain in a positive state no matter what happens, so you can get the benefit out of what manifested. That's it. And if we can more perfectly and precisely practice that and actually think of it as an instruction manual, like you would follow an instruction manual to operate any piece of machinery, then you will see that it works. Everything will start to fall into place and everything will start to flow in your life. That's the practice that he's suggesting and encouraging us to follow. Any other kind of what he calls permission slip, any ritual, any technique, any object you want to use, in a sense, that doesn't matter. If you are attracted to use it, whatever it may be, tarot cards, astrology, crystals, that's fine. If you're attracted to it, it means your belief system is aligned with it in a way that you will probably allow it to work for you, to allow you to give yourself permission to be more of who you are. But you're the one making the decision to give yourself permission. It's not the actual tool that's doing it. It's just that you believe it is, and therefore that's why it works. So ultimately, the ultimate permission slip is you. And you get to the point where you realize it's just about making choices and realizing that the choices you make will stick. Now, if they don't, then that's an opportunity to examine what beliefs you might be holding on to that won't let it stick. And when you do that and let those beliefs go, you will find again that you'll put yourself back in the position where the precise use of that formula will actually start working for you to your advantage. Again, remember, these things always work. It's not that they don't ever stop working. But do they work to your advantage or do they work to your disadvantage? Because they can only take their cue from what you believe to be true. And if you believe in negativity and fear-based beliefs, that's what they'll reinforce, because they don't have a mind of their own. They're taking their cue from you. You're in charge, you're in control. You've been given the free will to choose out of a multitude of lists of things you can choose and how to do them. And if you choose to understand that the ones that are more creative, more positive are what you really prefer, then you have to allow your belief systems to align with that, because the reality is just a reflection, as I said, and it's only going to reflect what you're putting out. So if you're holding on to fear-based belief systems, that's the only kind of reflection you can get. But when you change them into positive belief systems, that's the only kind of reflection you can get. It is simple physics. What you put out is what you get back.
Well, and it's like I was saying to you, the work that we do at Sedona Soul Adventures is a permission slip. And so much of it, of what we're doing, is helping people come out of the fear-based beliefs that they have and moving them into the higher vibrations. Because for a lot of people, I think when you say to them, drop your fear, they're like, okay, I don't know how to do that. Or, stop
Sure.
it.
Well, again, that's why I like the way that Bashar has sort of brought that information into a pragmatic sort
Yes.
of kit, because the way you do that is by finding out what's the belief that's generating the fear. Because
Yes.
you can't have an emotion, you can't have a thought, you can't have a behavior or an experience if there isn't something you believe to be true first. The belief is the blueprint of the reality. And the emotions, the thoughts, and the behaviors are the reinforcement of that blueprint to make it seem real. Because remember, physical reality isn't real except as an experience. It's an illusion. It's a projection of consciousness. It's not actually physically outside of us. So the belief systems have to reinforce themselves with emotions, with thoughts, with behaviors and experiences to make them seem like facts, to make them seem solid, to make them seem real. So when you understand that if you can get in touch with what the belief system is actually saying to you, you will usually realize that a negative belief system doesn't make sense. All you have to do is kind of look around for alternatives that people are doing in ways that contradict that belief system. Go, well, wait a minute, if they can do it, why can't I? What is it that I'm believing is not possible for me that's clearly possible for someone else. So if you can get in touch literally consciously instead of unconsciously with what the belief system is literally saying to you, it'll usually turn out to be illogical and nonsensical. And once it becomes nonsensical, it's gone. That's the end of the process of letting it go, because you don't hold on to things that don't make sense. It's not the beginning of the process. A lot of people do. It's like, okay, well, I'll get the belief to not make sense. Then what do I do to get rid of it? Well, it's like it's gone because you don't hold on to things that don't make sense. Now, if you do keep holding on to it, all that tells you is it should be your first clue that you still have another belief that is making it look like it makes sense, because that's the only reason you would still hold on to it, is that you believe the alternative is worse. That's one of the common things a negative belief tells you, so you won't let it go, because all beliefs are designed to perpetuate themselves. They have to. That's just what they have to do, or you couldn't have any kind of physical experience, positive or negative. So the idea is that you have to realize that if you're still holding on to something, it's because the belief has made you buy into the idea, not a fact, but the idea that if you let it go and change, something worse will happen. That's why one of the brilliant things that Bashar has done is said, look, it's easy to figure out from asking one of two questions pretty easily what your belief system is. And that is either A, what would I have to believe about myself is true in this experience in order to experience what I'm experiencing? Or B, because we're so used to using fear and experiencing fear, you can use fear to your advantage by saying, if I did in fact choose to move forward in the way I say I prefer to, what am I terrified might happen? That will usually bring up a litany of all sorts of negative and fear-based beliefs. Oh, I'm afraid I won't succeed. I'm afraid I'll fail. I'm afraid nobody will like it. I'm afraid it'll be no good. All of that starts to come up, and most of that is based on the primary negative belief, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't deserve this. So that's kind of where it starts. But once you begin that self-examination process, you realize those things just don't make sense when you compare them to the understanding of how reality works. So, for example, briefly, many people have talked to Bashar about the idea of their belief or fear that they're not worthy. And his basic comeback, although, you know, there can be very specific, a lot of specifics in this depending on the person, but the basic comeback is, look, do you exist? Well, sure, of course I exist. All right, well, do you think creation makes mistakes? Most people will usually say, well, no, I guess not. All right, so if creation thought it was necessary for you to exist in order for it to be everything that it needed to be, you are worthy of your existence by the fact that you exist and nothing else is needed. So why argue with creation about your worth? You can never win that argument because you can never stop existing, because that's your fundamental quality. That which exists cannot become non-existence for the simple and weirdly obvious fact that nothing that exists can become non-existent, because by definition, non-existence doesn't exist. There's nowhere for existence to go. So if you exist, you're worthy of existence. Stop arguing with creation about that. You can never, ever, ever win that argument. And people can start there and build on that.
I love that. I love that you went into that, because I think it's one of the most important of Bashar's teachings, because it is something that so many people struggle with, the whole I'm not worthy thing. And when you think about it in terms of what you just said, you have to exist for all of existence to reach what it wants to reach and to have its highest excitement. I mean, that's...
You're part of it. You're part of it, and you can't not be part of it.
Right.
So you might as well relax. You know? And, you know, he does this other thing too. He attacks this from, well, not attacks, but yeah, he approaches this from many different points of view. And one of the ones I really like too is, you know, he says, okay, you know, you're thinking, okay, I'm not worthy. Great. Now, but you probably, people who think they're not worthy sort of probably assume that everyone else is. So he's basically saying, okay, so you're saying I'm not worthy, which you think is a very humbling thing to say. But if you're saying that you out of all of the beings in existence are the only one who's not worthy. Well, that's pretty arrogant, don't you think? So, you know, he can approach this from all sorts of psychological points of view, excuse me, just to get people to sort of look at it from a different perspective. And they kind of go, oh yeah, I guess that would be kind of arrogant to think that I alone am the only being within creation who is not worthy. And so I'm kind of actually exalting myself while I think I'm humbling myself. It's a very paradoxical kind of position, you know.
So I I want everyone to really get this whole idea of following your excitement, your highest excitement to the best of your ability. And so I want to ask you, do you feel more excited sometimes, less excited sometimes? You know, how does that work for you?
Yeah, but the excitement also, you have to understand the excitement itself can change because it depends on what you're doing. So it's not like you have to always be jumping up and down with your hair on fire. Not that I have any, but the idea is that a state of blissful peace can also be an expression of your excitement. So don't confuse the idea that excitement always means you're physically running around like crazy. Excitement can simply be that centered place where you know you are doing exactly what you need to be doing at that moment. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I'd like people to be clear about that. Now, the other thing, of course, is, I mean, you sort of said, you know, I want people to get this. It's nice if people do. But one of the most important things that Bashar talks about is, look, it's all well and good to share these ideas. And this is the way Bashar approaches it himself. It is his passion and his pleasure to share these concepts. Whoever decides to utilize them and get an effect from them, that's wonderful. But all we can do to help others is give them the option to know that these pathways exist, these options exist. What they do with the information is absolutely none of our business because we don't really know what that person's life path really is. They may need to go through what they're going through that everyone might wish, oh, gee, I wish they could get out of that. Maybe they don't need to get out of that right now. Maybe when they do, if they do finally connect into some of these ideas, maybe it'll be a more profound connection by having now gone through the negative stuff they're going through. So no one can really speak for another person's pathway or timing of when they should get these ideas, if they even need to. Remember that we are all infinite, indestructible beings. And therefore, what's our rush? What's our hurry? We'll get it somewhere if we need to at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this life. So, but the way to help is to at least be a shining example that these options are available. Because if someone is at least willing to look for these options, then at least you have provided the opportunity for them to find them. And that's about all you can do. Just be an example. And by just being an example in your life, you never know who you're actually going to affect. You could be walking down the street, just looking very happy. Someone on the other side of the street could just be seeing you and go, why is that person so happy? Gosh, they've just brightened my day up just by seeing them. You may never even know how many people you've helped just by living your most joyful life. You don't always have to know what the effects are or the impact on anyone else to know that there must be some somewhere. It's kind of, as Bashar says, there are no one-sided coins. If you have the head, there has to be the tail or there wouldn't be a coin. So if you have a gift to give, if you have something to share, share it. Even if some people won't accept it, you have to know there must be someone who will and who is looking for that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had the urge to give the gift or the sharing because that would be pointless. That would be like having a one-sided coin. If you have a gift, someone in that reality must be waiting to receive that gift. Now, it doesn't mean you go out and you accost everybody and say, you have to buy into this, you have to listen to me, and you get all preachy. No, it's a natural flow. You have to trust the timing. The opportunity will present itself. I never talk to anybody about the idea of the channeling if they don't know what that is, unless they ask the questions that open the door. That's what tells me that that conversation is important to that moment. And I still will approach it very softly. Because again, it's not about trying to overthrow or overwhelm their own belief system. It's about introducing them to a concept that they seem willing to be open to listening to, and in a way that perhaps works with their definitions in their belief system. You're just planting a seed. That's all you're doing at that particular moment. If they want more, they'll ask for more. If they don't ask for more, they don't need more at that time, and it's not your duty to push it on them. Because anything that you feel you have to push on someone, well, then you just don't believe in the power of that thing yourself. As Bashar says, the greatest power requires the gentlest touch. So they'll get what they need when they need to get it. There's a synchronicity in the fact that they may have asked you to share something with them, and that's all you need to do, and take it just that far. If they want more, they'll ask for more.
I want to ask you, because of where we are right now, where do you have ideas or thoughts about what the pandemic is here to show us or teach us? And
well,
I don't.
Yeah, I know Bashar recently talked about this in his monologue with the eye of the needle, and that certainly is available to people. But in general, you know, I think we are looking at the consequence of certain choices we have made over time. And now we're giving ourselves an opportunity to sort of sit back, sequester ourselves, and rethink, what do we want this world to be? You know, do we want to make choices that bring about these kinds of consequences? Because I know that one of the things Bashar has said is that the very destruction of certain ecological systems on the planet is one of the factors that allows something like the coronavirus to spread in the way that it has, because there are no longer the environments that would naturally contain it. So it's about looking at ourselves, looking at the choices we make in general, and Bashar goes into greater detail about this, and really deciding in this moment of sequestering to use it as kind of a monastic going within experience to shed ourselves of those things that really don't serve us, the belief systems that really aren't aligned with us, to be able to pass through this metaphorical eye of the needle by stripping away all those things that are no longer relevant so that we can pass through it more effortlessly and come out the other side with greater opportunities and more positive choices to create the world that we really prefer by making different choices. That to me essentially is what this time is all about. Make different choices, because these are the consequences we don't prefer. And they're the direct result of choices we've made in the past to buy into fear-based belief systems.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, so I have one more really important question.
Sure.
I'm used to for years seeing you in your Hawaiian print shirts. And then all of a sudden last Saturday for the live stream, you were in a black shirt. Now, has there been a new decision made? Is there a shift? Is it a message? Were the shirts in the laundry?
You can look at it in any way you wish. Obviously, in a sense, probably two main reasons. This is a different time. Again, kind of going within, being a little bit more contained. But at the same time, I'm going to give you a very practical reason. The background behind me shows black shirts better. So see, it works on both levels.
And you're a young guy, so.
Yeah, it's better for the lighting, and it's better to hide the microphone. And because I'm actually wearing a microphone, you probably can't even see it on my shirt, can you?
I never see the microphones. You're so good. You're so good
But
at that.
no, you know, it's a different time, it's a different energy. And while in many ways the Hawaiian shirts, you know, can also uplift people and things like that, this right now just feels like, you know, we're doing something that's just a little bit more contained, something that we want people to, you know, not lose their joy over, but, you know, but take seriously in the sense of the work they need to do, the inner work that needs to be done right now. So, you know, we're presenting this, like I said, in a kind of a way that you have your little space. You're paying attention to more what's being said rather than what's being seen. And that I think is really what's more important right now.
Yeah. And I just want to, I didn't mention it before, but Bashar in the way that he does is over Sedona. Yes?
Yes, his ship is over Sedona. He has been for quite some time. He's helping to sort of balance the energy of that vortex, because it's connected to many other vortices in North America and around the world, along with other beings who are over other vortices. So they're kind of helping to smooth out that energy a little bit for us, so that the transition can be a little bit smoother than perhaps it otherwise would have been. Now he's also, you know, been coming out with other information for us, you know, for people who do in fact want to find out anything that he has said or anything that's upcoming in terms of events, they can certainly go to bashar.org, bashar.org, to find out what upcoming events there are and what information from past sessions are available. He's also recently come out with a new book. He actually dictated a book to me. So it's a completely channeled book called The Masters of Limitation. And this is an ET's observations of Earth. So he's not only talking about, you know, more of these suggestions in a more detailed way, he's also giving more background about his society, his relationship to us, what they're like compared to us. So people who are interested in a sort of new presentation of this information, by all means, please, we would be very happy for you to go onto the website. You can go under What's New, and it will take you to the page where you can see the book, The Masters of Limitation. We're also putting together some new books now because people have been wanting a lot of new information. So the formula we've been talking about is going to come out as its own book that will therefore have the ability for people to literally have that in their hands and refer to it and make sure that they're following the instruction manual very precisely, because the formula will literally be a map for navigating your best path in life. So all of these things are be coming out this year, so people can have a little bit of a new grasp of the information that Bashar shares with in many different ways other than just these vocal sessions.
Well, and we'll put all that information on our website too with this. So thank you, Darryl, so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Deborah. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this and share it with more people.
Well, and I want to thank you for devoting your life to this. And I know that it's been your highest excitement, but there's still, you know, an element of being of such huge service. And this has, I mean, in my life and for so many other people, this service has been so incredibly valuable. And so I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've gotten a lot out of it myself, obviously, but it simply is my passion and my pleasure to do this. So thank you for allowing me to do it.
Thank you.
All right. You have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care, be safe, and hopefully we will see you all soon back out in the physical world. Take care.